Hallo und willkommen. Welcome to AidanEyewitness. We're on the train from home base into Manchester to look at 5 controversial building projects. We'll shortly be arriving at Manchester Piccadilly Station. And we're here at Piccadilly Station. I'm just going to head down to Port Street to our first location. Not forgetting that just next to here is going to be the HS2 station, if it ever gets built. We'll head down towards the northern quarter and stop by the intersection of Hilton Street and Port Street with some of the oldest houses in Manchester dating from the 18th century. And just over there is the new construction site. It's controversial because it was a little bit too high and planning permission was refused twice, but finally it was approved. The other reason why it's controversial is because of the lack of affordable housing. Well, construction is underway now, but it's still being criticised because there's still no affordable housing. The name of the construction site? Number 1, Port Street, Northern Quarter. The site is located on a former car park, and there are still a few others around here, but I predict they'll be built on. So here are the visualisations. Facing onto Great Ancoat Street. It looks very plush and luxurious. 33 stories, 100 metres or 328 feet tall. Just enough to count as a skyscraper. £154 million. Completion 2025. City living redefined. 477 apartments, 1 ultimate address. The location is right next to Brownsfield Mill, where the plane manufacturer Avro had their first workshops. Select Property CEO Adam Price said, "It will be the ultimate residential offer." Now that's a bold statement given the competition, but we'll see. Architect Ian Simpson says it will become a gateway to the Northern Quarter in the same way his Beetham Tower is a gateway to Deansgate. He talks about the urban contemporary loft apartments that Manchester, Brooklyn and Shoreditch are famous for. Once finished, he concludes, it will be the ultimate place for professionals to live. It seems to me that in a project like this, affordable apartments are simply not on the agenda. Here's a CGI from above. From a pigeon's point of view, there are plenty of those in Manchester. We'll proceed across Piccadilly Gardens, a lost cause. They said the infamous Piccadilly Berlin Wall was going to be coming down, but it's still here. This is part of the so-called pavilion. Just like the tiles on the Arndale Centre, they're still there as well. Oh well, enough said. Our next controversial building is one that's proposed for the site next to the Britain's Protection, one of Manchester's oldest pubs. Now there were buildings on this site before, but they were about the same height as the pub. But the new building is going to be about the same height as the Axis Tower on the other side of the street. The proposal dates from 2022, but as you can see, nothing has happened. It would occupy this very small site with a curved facade to match the outline of the area. The 27-storey tower on pillars would leave some airspace next to the pub, but the contrast in height is extreme. It begs the question, does every bit of spare land in the city centre have to have a high-rise building placed on it? Anyhow, it hasn't happened yet. The Britain's Protection is a long-standing institution in Manchester. I remember the Civic Society used to meet here in the late 90s. Inside the rear courtyard, some words about its history. The Britain's Protection has proudly stood on the corner of Great Bridgewater Street and Lower Mosley Street since 1806. Our third project is under construction on the site of the former Bootle Street police station. That's the old facade from the 1930s. In the original plans drawn up under Gary Neville and Ryan Giggs, 2 tall, dark tombstone-like towers would have appeared. The 1930s police station facade would have been destroyed, along with the Abercrombie pub. But after a public outcry, a new plan was drawn up. Pub and facade would be kept. 2 dark towers became 1 slimmer glass tower. Actually, I've read that Gary Neville has apologised. At least he realised his mistake. Plenty of other developers didn't, and Manchester City Council have never apologised for any of their mistakes. These are the visualisations, the CGIs, but they're mostly sales-orientated, all from the perspective of a flying bird. And here's a bit of the official video, as shown on the MEN website, a fly-around with dusk aerial views. Interesting perhaps to those grey-feathered Manchester residents, but for those of us who prefer to keep our feet on the ground, we need to see how the building will look from street level, from various angles, and especially from Albert Square. and I'm here standing on Jackson's Row looking at the next controversial project. It's St Michael's, a massive new development built on the site of the old Bootle Street police station. And since my last visit here, it's actually well advanced. That tower is shooting up story by story, but it's not the taller tower, that's going to come later. The synagogue is still here, but that is to be removed to make way for the new tower, which will rise up into the sky. Pubs hold memories. My personal memory of the Abercrombie is from 2016, meeting up with the late C.P. Lee and other musicians for a photo shoot in front of the nearby Free Trade Hall. It was to promote the concert organised by Manchester Digital Music Archive to commemorate Bob Dylan's Judas concert, 1966. The notice says, "Step inside Manchester's most historic pub, witness to the Peterloo Massacre, 16th of August, 1819. Established 1780. Well, I'm here by the Sir Ralph Abercrombie, that's with BY at the end. It's right next to the St Michael's construction site. The Abercrombie will be incorporated into the final scheme, but originally it was to have been demolished. So this is where we're up to on the building site. But I have one criticism, not the building itself, not the design, but something else. I'll tell you in a while. St Michael's is a much better scheme now, after they took public opinion into account. It's funny, the site seems remarkably quiet. And right next to St Michael's, the Quaker Meeting House, and a reminder of that momentous event in history. The next controversial building we're going to have a look at is situated, it will be overlooking this small kind of square area enclosed by Bridge Street, Parsonage Gardens and King Street West. And it will involve the demolition of this building, Reedham House, built in 1849. It was a former showroom of the carriage works behind. And Historic England have put in an objection to the proposals because they think the building is valuable. However, the developers think that it's not worthy of being saved and that greater gain will be achieved by constructing the new building. The developer is Property Alliance Group, and that's the proposed building in the middle. On the left is the planned Alberton House by developer Bruntwood. Let's do a today and in the future comparison. The new building is 14 stories, designed by John Matthew Architects. It lies to the north of the square, so no problems with shadows. To be honest, I hadn't been consciously aware of the Grade 2 listed Reedham House, though I knew this pedestrianised square was overlooked by attractive, low-rise, mostly heritage buildings. That's what gives it its character. In the 70s, George Best had his boutique just opposite Reedham House. Around the time Reedham House was built, the railway line to Altrincham had just opened. There was a cholera epidemic. Manchester had not yet received its city status. That came in 1853. The Free Trade Hall, 1856. The facade looks to be in excellent condition and full of character. It must be original, otherwise it wouldn't have been listed. The interior is not original. One of the reasons they say the facade is not worth saving. But the Free Trade Hall interior wasn't original, and that was saved. Above street level, it looks virtually unchanged, and with the adjoining carriage house, we have a time capsule from 170 years ago. Many of these forgotten buildings are gems that can be sympathetically restored. They never go out of date. So they want to restore the carriage works, that's good. But to destroy the eye-catching former showroom at the front, there seems to be a contradiction here. This is the view from Parsonage Gardens today and the architect's visualisation. The building looks well designed, green, not just on the exterior. Would it not be possible to incorporate the old facade like they did in Cork? This 1870 station facade was incorporated into Albert Key House. So, what happened with the planning application? The answer can be found in Place Northwest, 28th of July, 2023, and I quote, "Planning committee members approved PAG's office scheme unanimously, despite concerns from Historic England about the loss of the listed Reedham House." Unquote. But this sets a precedent. Could other listed buildings in Manchester now be lost? At least in years to come, we can look back at my photos and video clips. That's why I do it. I'm here at the 5th controversial building project next to Victoria Station. It's New Victoria, or New Vic. And on the former car park next to the station, which I remember as being quite small, they've managed to construct a very large residential project consisting of 2 buildings. Now, it's definitely 2 buildings. We can see the gap between the 2 of them. We can just see the sky there. And I'm going to take a closer look at this building from different angles. And I'm also going to tell you the criticism that I have of all these building projects, actually. An exciting gateway development of 520 homes for rent coming soon. New Victoria, a place to live, a place to work. So looking at the map, we can see Victoria Station on the left, Corporation Street is here, and this is the site of New Victoria, the former car park. Actually, maybe not quite as small as I remember, but still, it's kind of sandwiched between the street and the station. And this is the office building that's going to be built to the south of New Victoria, next to the tram lines. Oh no, it isn't. That was the original plan from 2016. Since then, developers have come up with a new design, slightly taller, with a reddish-brown exterior, announced last year. But is it going to go ahead? If so, then the CGI is misleading and should be changed. The development is by Muse, 520 apartments in 2 buildings, 20 and 25 stories, with shops, workspace, public areas. Cost £185 million. Architect Shepherd Robson. The design is high-tech, minimalist, functional, surging into the sky. This was the scene 2 years ago at the beginning of construction, and today, in the bright sunshine, it looks shiny, metallic, like some gigantic gaming computer. From the side, looking up, what do those vertical windows remind me of? Recognise this building? The tall and New Vic Tower is 89 metres or 292 feet. And this building? 380 metres or 1,250 feet to the top floor. Yes, it's the Empire State Building. New Vic is 1/4 its height. In this sense, Manchester is not at all like New York. As we move along Corporation Street, we can see the perspective changing. There are 2 buildings. They glisten and shine in the bright sunlight. But people have been reacting negatively. The fact is that from Miller Street, in dull weather, that tall grey wall seems to fill the frame. You lose your sense of scale. You feel disorientated. It's like something out of a science fiction film, especially on a grey day. It becomes difficult to read the building, and it's not clear that there are 2 separate buildings. They seem to merge into one long ground scraper. Is this a design flaw? Maybe that's just a matter of opinion. Let's move down Miller Street and try to separate them again. Ah yes, 1 has become 2 again. Seeing the sky between them is a relief. They look tall and slim, like in the CGI. But I don't remember seeing any CGI of these buildings from Miller Street looking like a ground scraper. And that brings me to my point. We need to see visualizations from all angles, at all times of day and in different weather conditions, for every proposed building. The technology exists. There should be no surprises. Let's look at the New Victoria Pair from the sunny side across Victoria Station. What adjectives spring to mind? Impressive? Oppressive? Inspiring? Imposing? Characterful? Characterless? Futuristic? Please like, subscribe, share with others and post a comment. I'll reply as soon as I can. Well, I'm back here at Oxford Road Station, heading out to home base. The train's delayed. So, more and better visualizations of building projects. That's what I want, but are we going to get that? We'll see. So, vielen Dank fürs Zuschauen und auf Wiedersehen in Manchester.